You walked into that dealer 2 years ago and you spent $800 on a chainsaw because the guy behind the counter told you it was the best thing on the wall. He said it with confidence. He said the brand name like it meant something. You took it home, you gassed it up, you sharpened the chain, and by the second cord of wood it was already giving you grief. Carburetor problems, bar oil leaking where it should not, a chain tensioner that stripped out before the leaves even finished falling. You went back to the dealer, and he looked at you like you were the problem. Like maybe you did not mix the fuel right. Like maybe you pushed it too hard. And you walked out of there feeling like an idiot, when the truth is you were not an idiot at all. You were just sold something that was designed to sit on a shelf and look like a tool, not actually be one. The margins on certain brands are so fat that a dealer can practically pay his rent on a single weekend of chainsaw sales. That is the part nobody tells you when you are standing there with your wallet out. If this is the kind of thing nobody tells you at the equipment dealer, subscribe to Split and Saw, because every single video on this channel exists to give you the real answer before you spend $1 you cannot get back. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss it. There is a whole world of professional cutting equipment that never gets recommended at the average dealer counter, not because it is inferior, but because the economics do not favor the guy selling it to you. The two brands we are talking about today are living proof of that. One of them carries a name you may have seen in passing, but probably dismissed because nobody around you runs one. The other one you have almost certainly never heard of at all unless you have spent serious time around arborists or professional tree crews on the West Coast. Neither one is cheap in the sense of being poorly built. Both of them will outwork and outlast what the big box store is pushing this season. And neither one of them will ever get a prominent display at your local dealer because the margins are thin and the sales reps do not show up with promotional incentives. What they do have is real engineering, real professional track records, and real reasons why the people who cut wood for a living choose them when they are spending their own money. Let us start with Dolmar. If you are not familiar with the name, you are not alone in America, but you would be very alone in Europe or Japan if you said you had never heard of it. Dolmar was founded in Hamburg, Germany in 1927 by Andreas Stihl. Yes, that Stihl. The company that would later become the most recognized chainsaw brand on earth started by building a saw under the Dolmar name, and the original Dolmar Model A from 1927 was the first production gasoline chainsaw ever manufactured in the world. That is not a marketing claim. That is recorded industrial history. Andreas Stihl went on to build his own company separately, and Dolmar eventually changed hands over the decades, passing through German industrial ownership before landing in the hands of Makita Corporation, the Japanese power tool manufacturer, in 1991. That acquisition is the key to understanding what Dolmar actually is in 2024. When Makita bought Dolmar, they did not gut the engineering and rebrand it. They integrated it. The engineers who built Dolmar saws in the post-Makita era are the same engineers who developed the Makita chainsaw line, and in many cases the platforms are identical. The Dolmar PS5105C and its Makita equivalent share the same fundamental architecture. Same displacement at 50.1 cubic centimeters. Same magnesium crankcase. Same automatic chain oiler system. Same ignition timing. What differs is the color scheme, and in some cases minor feature variations based on the target market. In Europe, Dolmar is sold through professional forestry dealers and taken seriously by production cutters. In North America, it has historically struggled for shelf space because Makita's tool distribution network prioritizes cordless and electric tools, where the margin story is easier to tell. The PS5105C specifically is a saw that deserves more attention than it gets. 50.1 cubic centimeters puts it in the class of saws that can run a 16-inch bar all day and step up to an 18-inch bar for felling work without straining. The power-to-weight ratio on this machine is genuinely strong. The saw weighs in at about 10.5 pounds without bar and chain, which is not ultralight, but it is not a boat anchor either. For a saw in this displacement class, that weight means the engineers paid attention to where they put material and where they could take it away. The automatic chain oiler on the PS5105C is adjustable, which sounds like a small thing until you realize how many saws in this price range give you a fixed oiler that either starves your bar on dry hardwood or floods your chain on softwood. Adjustable oiling means you can tune it to the wood and the conditions, and that extends bar and chain life significantly over a full cutting season. The anti-vibration system on this saw uses rubber dampening mounts between the engine housing and the handle assembly, which is standard on professional saws but often done cheaply on consumer equipment. Dolmar does it properly, and if you are cutting more than 2 hours in a stretch, That difference accumulates in your hands and shoulders in a very real way. The carburetor on the PS5105C is a Walbro, which is an American-made component that professional mechanics know how to work on, and that parts are available for without special ordering. That matters. One of the quiet ways cheap saws punish you is by being built with proprietary carburetor designs that require either a dealer visit or a long wait for parts. The Walbro system is field serviceable by any competent small engine mechanic, and that translates directly to less downtime when something needs attention. The air filtration on this saw uses a multi-stage system that keeps fine sawdust and debris out of the combustion chamber more effectively than the single-stage filters you find on budget equipment. Running a saw in dry hardwood conditions in midsummer will tell you everything you need to know about whether a filter system is serious or not. The PS5105C passes that test without drama. Who actually buys this saw? Mostly people who already know what they are doing and are tired of paying the stale or Husqvarna premium for features they will never use. Small logging operations, firewood dealers who run 3 or 4 saws, and need reliability without paying professional forestry pricing. Property owners with 10 or more wooded acres who cut their own firewood every year and want a saw that will still be running correctly in its 5th season. The PS5105C is not trying to be the most powerful saw in the class. It is trying to be the most consistently capable saw at its price point, and it largely succeeds at that. Before we keep going, I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually answer this in the comments below. Have you ever spent real money on a log splitter or a chainsaw, taken it home, put it to work, and watched it fall apart in the first season? Because if that happened to you, you are not alone, and you are not stupid for trusting the brand on the label. Drop a comment right now and just say, "I got burned." That is it. 3 words. Because every person who reads that comment is going to feel less alone, and you are going to help somebody else avoid making the same mistake. I read every single comment on this channel. Now let us talk about RedMax, and specifically the CS3800S, because this is the brand that most American and Canadian property owners have never encountered, and that professional arborists in certain regions treat like a quiet secret they are not entirely sure they want to share. RedMax is a name that originated in Japan through a company called Komatsu Zenoa, which is the same Zenoa that built 2-stroke engines for professional outdoor power equipment for decades, and earned a serious reputation among landscape and tree care professionals in the Pacific Northwest specifically, where the tree work is demanding and where equipment gets evaluated by how it performs in 100-foot Douglas fir and red cedar, not by how it photographs at a trade show. Komatsu Zenoa developed a line of outdoor power equipment under the RedMax brand that was designed around professional landscape and arboriculture use cases, and for a period of time in the late 1990s and early 2000s, RedMax handheld equipment was quietly becoming the preferred brand among landscaping companies in California, Oregon, and Washington that were willing to pay for quality but unwilling to pay for a name badge. Then in 2008, Husqvarna acquired the brand. Here is where the story gets important. When Husqvarna acquired RedMax, they did not dissolve it or turn it into a rebranded budget line. They integrated the Zenoa engine technology into the Husqvarna engineering ecosystem and continued selling RedMax equipment through a separate dealer channel, primarily targeting landscape contractors, golf course maintenance crews, and commercial arborists who had already built relationships with RedMax dealers and did not want to switch. The CS3800S comes directly out of that heritage. It is a 37.7 cubic centimeter saw, which puts it at the smaller end of the mid-range, but smaller displacement does not mean less capability when the engineering is right. At 8.6 pounds without bar and chain, the CS3800S is a genuinely light saw. And in arborist work specifically, that weight matters enormously. When you are working in a canopy, when you are doing aerial cutting or limbing at height, every fraction of a pound you are not holding is energy you are saving for the actual work. Professional arborists understand this in a way that ground-level firewood cutters sometimes do not, and the CS3800S was designed with that reality in mind. The engine in the CS3800S reflects Zenoa's approach to 2-stroke design, which emphasizes clean combustion and strong mid-range torque over peak horsepower numbers. The stratocharge technology that Zenoa developed, and that carries through into current RedMax engineering, is a scavenging system that pushes fresh air through the combustion chamber ahead of the fuel-air mixture during the scavenging cycle. What that means in plain language is that less unburned fuel exits through the exhaust, the engine burns cleaner, produces less smoke, and runs more efficiently on the fuel it consumes. It also means reduced emissions, which matters in certain states where air quality regulations affect what equipment you can legally operate commercially. California, in particular, has strict small engine emission standards, and Redmax equipment has historically been compliant in ways that some competitors have struggled with. That is not a minor point for a professional operating commercially in a regulated market. The chain brake on the CS3800S is a side-entry design that responds quickly and that professional arborists specifically request because in canopy work, the speed of the chain brake engagement can be the difference between a controlled stop and a serious injury. Cheap saws have chain brakes that are technically present, but that are slow or inconsistent under real working conditions. The Redmax system is tight, fast, and reliable in the kind of cold, wet conditions that Pacific Northwest tree work happens in regularly. The bar and chain system on this saw is compatible with standard Oregon and style Rollomatic format bars, which means when your bar wears out, you are not hunting for a proprietary replacement. You walk into any decent dealer and get a bar that fits. That is a detail that sounds small until you are in the middle of a job with a worn bar and the nearest Redmax dealer is 2 hours away. The throttle response on the CS3800S is notably crisp, which experienced operators will tell you matters more than peak power output for most of what they actually do. Limbing, pruning, processing, and the landing, all of those tasks require short bursts of power and precise control over acceleration. A saw that accelerates smoothly and consistently from idle is a saw you can work with precision, and precision in cutting work reduces fatigue and improves quality. The anti-vibration system on this saw is engineered for extended aerial use, which means it is arguably over-engineered for ground-level work. And over-engineered is not a complaint in a tool you intend to run seriously. Who actually buys the CS3800S? Commercial arborists in the western states and Canadian provinces where tree work is dense and demanding. Landscape contractors who need a reliable lightweight saw for cleanup and processing work. Property owners in areas like Western Oregon, British Columbia, and Washington State, who have discovered the brand through professional contacts and who want the commercial build quality without the full production logging price point. The saw is also increasingly used by wildland firefighters and forestry crews who need a light, reliable tool for hazard tree work, and that need to know with certainty that it will start and run in difficult conditions without coaxing. It is a narrow audience in the sense that it is not a saw the average suburban homeowner needs. But for the person it is built for, it is one of the most capable options in its displacement class available in the North American market today, and it costs significantly less than a Husqvarna or Stihl equivalent with comparable professional specifications. The distribution reality for Redmax in North America is complicated. Because it is sold through a dedicated commercial dealer network, rather than through big box retail or general hardware stores, a lot of potential buyers never encounter it. You do not walk past it at the farm supply store. It is not hanging on the wall at the power equipment section of the home improvement chain. You find it because a professional arborist mentioned it to you, or because you were specifically looking for alternatives to the brand that let you down last season, or because you found your way to a real commercial outdoor power equipment dealer who carries it for the landscape contractors he services. That invisible distribution is exactly why it stays off the radar for most buyers, and exactly why it keeps showing up in the hands of professionals who have stopped buying for the label and started buying for the engineering. One thing worth noting about both of these brands in the context of servicing and parts availability is that neither one will leave you stranded in the way that a truly obscure brand might. Dolmar parts and service travel well through the Makita dealer network, and because the platforms are shared, a Makita certified technician can work on a Dolmar saw with complete confidence. Redmax parts travel through the Husqvarna commercial dealer network, which is extensive in North America, and which stocks replacement components for current production saws, without the long lead times that plague imported brands with no established service infrastructure. These are not garage brand saws where you are crossing your fingers every time something needs attention. They are engineered products backed by real corporate infrastructure, just sold through channels that prioritize professional users over casual retail buyers, and that distinction is why the average person has never been offered one at a dealer counter. The honest summary here is this. The Dolmar PS5105C is a 50 cubic centimeter professional grade saw, built on Makita engineering with German design heritage, an adjustable Walbro carburetor, a proper anti-vibration system, and a track record among firewood producers, small logging operations, and serious property owners who cut their own wood every year and need a saw that will still be working correctly 5 seasons from now. If you have been spending style money and getting disappointing results, this saw is worth a serious look before your next purchase. The Redmax CS3800S is a lightweight 37 cubic centimeter professional arborist saw built on Zenoa engine technology, now operating within the Husqvarna engineering family. With stratocharged combustion for cleaner burning, a fast reliable chain brake, crisp throttle response, and a weight profile that makes extended aerial and precision cutting work dramatically less exhausting. If you work in trees or you need a precision lightweight saw for serious property management, this is a brand that deserves your attention before you default to whatever is on the wall at the nearest dealer. Neither of these saws is for everyone. The right tool depends on what you are cutting, how much of it you are cutting, and whether you are willing to step outside the familiar names to get better value for your dollar. If what we covered today made you think differently about what you have been buying and what you have been missing, the next video on this channel is going to take you even further into the equipment decisions that matter. Go watch it. You have already spent the time getting this far, and what is waiting for you in that next one is worth every minute.